Hey guys, this is Pablo with Meditation Amsterdam. In today's video, I want to focus on the notion that within each of us, there is a kind of civil war taking place between two minds that work under very different tenets. There is a thinking mind and there is a heart mind or feeling mind. And I use the word mind on purpose because each of these, our brain and our heart, are or represent entire ways to process reality. And the ways in which they process reality are, before we do the work of yoga and integration, very much at odds with each other. There is, or seems to always be, a compromise or a choice to be made between thinking and feeling. The heart saying one thing, the mind advocating for another. And there seems to always be some sort of compromise between love and freedom. And if we dive into the topic, we could equate the thinking mind and make a caricature of the thinking mind and say that it is a fascist. And we could make a caricature of the heart or the feeling mind and call it a hippie. So please, this is not a treatise on the way people behave or anything around social dynamics. So let's not get sidetracked about hippies and fascists. This is about, it's simply a metaphor to try to illustrate the topic. And small parenthesis, I mentioned this because every metaphor that I use, I suddenly get advice on, right? I've been told how to be a better beekeeper, a better artist, all manner of things. It's fine. It's all good fun, but there is such thing as going on a tangent. So I'm using this not to talk about hippies and fascists, but rather to illustrate by way of caricature what these minds could stand for. So if you look at the thinking mind and why we could equate it to a fascist, well, and by the way, each of them thinks that their way of seeing reality and processing reality is the right way, right? So it's being done in a kind of vacuum or in an isolated way before we do the work of integrating the two. So the thinking mind's fascist attitudes could be seen in its compulsion to be in control, to create stability, safety, to judge things, classify things, and to desire that everything is in its proper place. Even if we are completely undisciplined as a person. It has little to do with how we behave. It is more a way of processing reality and the functions that it attributes to itself. Right? It's judging, classifying, making sure things are predictable, that they are in control, that things pan out well. It plans things, right? And because those are its functions, it sees the world, or it sees reality in that way. And it paints that picture of reality. And the heart, on the other hand, would be then equated to a hippie. And it's all about essentially connection, being touchy-feely, right? Carefree, inclusive, not bothered with the details or long-term planning. It's really living in the moment by the ups and downs of whatever emotionality is taking place and so on. And in me describing this, you could already start to see that the heart represents much more the feminine and the thinking mind represents much more the masculine or masculine traits. This is not man and woman I'm describing here. It's more masculine and feminine traits or qualities. So we have a rather big issue when these two are not in good terms with each other. And if we are of a sensitive nature, or if we've been exposed to difficult circumstances, especially in our early years, chances are that the heart is very much cut off. Or you could also have someone who is highly emotional, very labile, very volatile, and has a tough time instituting some of the benefits that the head would bring, right? So it could play either way. Most of us are cut off from the head, from the neck down, actually, and rely much more on the thinker to get us out of trouble and to dictate what's good in our lives. And what this eventually creates is this notion that we need to constantly be pinging back and forth between the way we feel about things and how we think about things. Because these two minds, separate from one another, give us no choice but to ping between them in what could be seen as a tug of war or indecision. And that's a very uncomfortable way to live, as a matter of fact. It's also rather suboptimal. It makes for unhappiness in general to have such a divide inside. So when we begin to do the work of yoga, one of the primary integrations that we want to make is indeed between the head and the heart, so that they become a single mind with dual purpose, as opposed to two minds, each of them with a separate purpose. Connecting the two makes them one. And it also makes for paradoxes, or things that seem to be insoluble problems. Suddenly, we can get on with things without having to make hugely difficult decisions. So the moment we have a decision in our hands, it means that there's division within. That's a dead giveaway that we are not flowing. We are hoping via our decision-making process that reality grinds to a halt while we decide to go left or right. And left and right are typically represented by connection versus freedom, or safety versus adventure, whichever way we want to see it. So how do you get a hippie and a fascist to get along with each other when they live by such seemingly contradictory standards and values? Their values are so far apart. And the process of yoga could be equated, if we keep following this analogy or this metaphor, with one of progressive building of trust between these two minds. And I do mean progressive because depending on the amount of divide between the two, there could be just a humongous level of mistrust. Typically, it will be felt for the heart. Typically, it will be mistrust of the mind for the affects of the heart. But it goes also the other way around. We just can't see it. And so I'll try to illustrate how that goes. So mistrust of the mind for the affects of the heart would be, there's something uncomfortable that I need to face, but I don't trust that I can withstand the emotions that would come from that, right? So I keep avoiding, right? That's the avoidance game. And I keep distracting myself and finding ways to weasel out of feeling what needs to be felt, because it feels foreign to me. It feels threatening to me. These things, the mind looks down and says, this thing down here, it's icky, it's volatile, it's painful, and I don't trust it one bit. It keeps getting me into trouble. That's the view from up here. And because we inhabit much in our head, as I said, that seems to be the prevailing avoidance and mistrust that is happening. It's from the top down. We don't trust. From the bottom up, things are also in a stalemate, in a stand of mistrust. But it happens in a much more passive-aggressive type of way. So that the head can. I'm not used to wearing glasses all the time yet. Clearly, the head can overtly avoid things. Right? It goes like, I don't think so. Right? So you're constantly suppressing and avoiding and distracting. The heart, on the other hand, has learned that whenever it wants to feel connection and whenever it wants to open itself up, it gets pushed away. Attention is withdrawn away from it, so it gets abandoned. And so to avoid that abandonment, the heart goes, all right, screw you then. I'm not going to give you that information. What I'm going to do instead is give you anxiety. Right? You're not willing to feel what I'm trying to feel, then I'm just going to sort of burn in discomfort, or I'm going to push it elsewhere, such as the diaphragm, or I'm going to somatize it in some gland that's going to stop working, and I'm going to give us all collectively some sort of psychosomatic autoimmune disease. How do you like those apples, right? So the heart, it doesn't have that sort of, because it's more yin, of course, it's more receptive. It just it diverts its receptivity and expresses it in ways that are not wholesome. So they do get expressed nonetheless, but it has seen that the mind is not willing to listen, so it just expresses things in a different way. And so there you have it. So you have this complete miscommunication between these two, and this mistrust between these two. So now it's difficult to go in and lead with the heart without freaking ourselves out. So typically we start to imbibe information about how to do this better and how to essentially use our mind better. One of the things that the mind can start to do is start to understand that this is the case and understand what are the elements that are making the heart reluctant to express its information, right? So one of the ways to do that, or one of the little insights that can help in allowing the heart to be felt a little bit more, is to understand that there are no logical or practical implications, or there are not necessarily logical and practical implications to what is being felt in the heart. See, the mind thinks, if I feel X, a therefore follows. If I feel X, I will have to do A, B, or C. If I feel X, Y, or Z, I will have, then, there's a therefore that follows what is felt in the heart. And through a little bit of study and maybe a little bit of experimentation, we come to learn that what is felt in the heart is its own explanation. That the feeling of what's in the heart is the full import of what's there. There is no therefore after it. The information and the therefore is the feeling itself. The mind doesn't know this, and it's difficult for the mind to anticipate this because the mind works in terms of cause and effect. If this, then that. If I feel X, that means Y. These are the implications, the horrific implications of this lingering feeling that I have somewhere in the heart. Whilst the heart just goes, no, I just have a feeling. That's it. There is no therefore that follows that. So it is important, whilst we begin to allow our feelings to rise to the surface a little bit more, and I might give indications of how how to do that a little bit better, that we make an effort to feel the sensations in the body and allow ourselves for the emotion to arise, and observe that the mind might be making stories about this because it is compulsively trying to interpret, and it's compulsively trying to find therefore. But that therefore is not really valid. There's little. It's the best that the mind can do, but it's not necessarily true. The truth of the feeling is the feeling. You see, so it takes a while, but this kind of information can help in starting to understand, okay, so the truth of the feeling is just the feeling. The therefore is being made up by the mind. So that's already starting to establish some lines of communication and a little bit of trust that says, well, it can feel bad, but it doesn't mean anything in particular. I'm the one attaching meaning, whereas this thing just wants to feel itself. Okay, that's pretty good. For the heart can learn to take instructions from the mind that might feel uncomfortable in the short term, and then by and by learn that things that are uncomfortable are done because there is a long term that eventually hits. And whilst things might feel uncomfortable now, such as, leaving a job that pays well, but it's, soul draining, or breaking up with a partner that feels safe, but it's not really making us happy. Those are things that are difficult to stomach for the heart. It's like, why are you making me do this, right? It would be the question of the heart. Why are you making me feel this discomfort? And the heart learns to trust that it can feel that discomfort and that it is all being done so that a more pervasive heartache can be avoided, right? So to go through an uncomfortable peak so that its more general baseline becomes higher and better. And that also takes extending a little bit of trust and seeing how things pan out. So through lack of judgment and through experimentation with discomfort in the short term, one starts to by and by create stronger lines of communication between these two, and they start to learn to trust one another. And it's a process of learning to trust. So it's a process for the head to learn to trust the heart, because it feels incredibly volatile and unreliable, like the sort of proverbial hippie. And it is difficult for the heart to trust the mind and go, well, whenever I offer you information, you just go around judging and suppressing things, right? So I'm just not going to bother. So it takes a while for the heart to trust that if it offers information to the mind, that it will use it for the greater benefit of the heart on the whole, okay? The suspension of judgment of emotion is a huge thing. And it is also a huge thing to experiment with short-term discomfort, as I said. And those are classic yogic avenues to begin to sort of force the mind to learn to experiment with these things and learn what is possible. The judgment that we exercise on our feelings also comes from the fact that the mind has not seen the benefit of those feelings. It's not just about not making stories about what's being felt. It's also about noticing that what's being felt is conveying a great wealth of information that can be factored into our decision making. Yeah. And that without factoring it into our decision making, Our life, if it's just about thinking and practicality and planning and safety, ends up being and looking and feeling like a fascistic regime, right? You have a 1984 overlord in the head trying to rule it all and control it all, and eventually it feels horrific, right? It feels dry and unsatisfying. We need the juiciness that's down here for life to be rich and satisfying. And the same goes for the heart. The benefit of allowing the mind to make rich decisions based on conveying it with information. Yeah, you risk a little bit of judgment of saying, listen, we can't feel that right now because we need to get this job done. I'm sorry. We'll feel it tonight when we are on our own and we can process this, for example. Or I need to go through the discomfort now. So these judgments that the mind makes about planning or whatever, by and by, the heart can start indeed to notice that the overall quality of life is better, more stable. Stability and connectedness, freedom and adventurous, those seemingly discrepant things can be had simultaneously when seen that they are actually reinforcing of one another. Ironically, the safer we feel, the more adventurous we become. You see? And the more connected we feel, the more freedoms we can allow ourselves to take without feeling that something is being sacrificed, and the other way around. So, but that, to understand that logically when we are divided inside is almost impossible. And this is not a logical exercise, right? It's much more of an integrative exercise. So that's what this video is about. Today it's about this notion of having, kind of a fascist in the head and a hippie in the heart, how the nature of these two minds is seemingly, or rather it is very far apart. They see reality, process reality in completely different ways, and that it is in our best interest to integrate those two so that those apparently different ways can become synthesized, and that we can produce things that neither of these can produce on its own, nor can they be produced by some sort of truce or negotiation, as if it was a committee inside trying to make a decision. We're talking about something else. We're talking about creating the heart-mind organ, something that is completely integrated from top to bottom. Curious to hear what you guys make of this one. And as usual, if you think that this content is helpful, then liking, sharing, and subscribing is highly appreciated. I'll be back with more pretty soon. Cheerio and bye-bye.